Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Here we go again.
Yeah, and so we know we have very interesting times afoot. Most definitely. We have a grand solar minimum going on, and we have obviously geopolitical unrest and instability. We have food crisis. We have all sorts of things going on as far as Earth with natural disasters and perhaps some that are not entirely natural. And the other thing we have is we have a magnetic pole reversal underway.
It's getting really busy and it's just kind of increasing more and more every day.
Yeah, when we really look at all the evidence of things, and again, we know in some cases, things appear to be hidden from us or perhaps distorted in some way as to get us to think along a certain lines, but may not always be so accurate.
I think distortion is a really good word for that.
Yeah, most definitely. So, we've seen reports and we've heard about the North Pole moving faster and faster and tracking all the way towards Siberia. In fact, it went past the geographical North Pole area and is heading over on the Siberian side right now and moving at a very fast rate. And there are what we call full magnetic pole reversals, where basically the north becomes south and vice versa. And again, this is with the magnetic field. And then there's excursions. And so excursions are when it shifts but doesn't hold, doesn't take, and bops back. And so we've had more excursions than we've had reversals. And the last time we had a full reversal, they say, was about 780,000 years ago.
And that's really all we can go by is what they tell us. So
They're going on evidence from what they find in the Earth itself, and we're going to touch on that. I find it fascinating that when we look at certain repeating cycles, because it's all about cycles, and this is what we've discussed with David at Adapt 2030 many times, as we've done probably half a dozen or more lives with David, and this is one of the topics that's fascinating. And we will have him back on hopefully in another couple weeks and get more into what he feels about this as well. When we look at our history, we see massive changes. There's massive periods of massive cataclysms that happen at kind of regular cycles, at regular intervals.
yes, there are. So at least we have some information to go by.
And everything is connected. Everything is connected. So when we look at the last champ event, and this was an event, this was a short reversal of the Earth's magnetic field. It occurred about 40,000 years ago, give or take, during the end of the last glacial period, and was first recognized in the late 1960s as a geomagnetic reversal, recorded in the last champ's lava flows. And this is in a district in France. And what's interesting about this is when I think about the timeline, immediately my mind goes over to Neanderthals. Immediately, because we know that a lot of humans have Neanderthal DNA, but Neanderthals themselves disappeared. Now, science will tell us, anthropologists will tell us, well, maybe it was us that killed them off. Survival of the fittest. Well, Neanderthals were stronger. Mm-hmm. They actually had bigger brains, too. They were thicker, stockier, sturdier, better adapted for this planet. Why did they die out and not us?
That's a really good question. And when I ask that question, what comes to me is that was very deliberate what happened to them. They were extremely capable beings, and they took control and they took charge, and that was their downfall.
Interesting. And, their timing of leaving us, because Neanderthals existed, they tell us, between 400,000 and 40,000 years ago, they disappeared. So 40,000 years ago coincides with this particular event, this particular short reversal of the magnetic field. Now, why would it affect them and not us?
I know, it's a good question.
Yeah, and I don't know unless there's some other factor going on. Perhaps, as Darwin was so so enamored with natural selection, perhaps there is selection going on, but maybe it's not natural.
Right. That's kind of what I'm gathering.
Okay, so you're getting that from the guides.
Yeah, that comes from the guides that wasn't so natural, and this happens over and over again where they use Earth's changes and then they add to them to control species.
Yeah, I did a video. I done two videos. Just trying to add a little shock factor.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them was like showing a fishbowl. Are we in the fishbowl? And then another one was basically alien ant farm.
Those were two fabulous shows too.
And when you look at it, just look again at all the legends. The Hopi being brought into the earth, selected, selected, and then told when it was safe to come back up. And we also hear about these beings that come after civilization has been collapsed and all, and then help to straighten things out. And then if we look at the Book of Enoch, it's in a different light because these beings are looked at as benevolent in all the cultures besides really the Judeo-Christian tradition, where instead the beings that help us out are turned into fallen angels. And it's interesting too because, as we said before in Genesis, it talks about the mighty men of old, the heroes, the men of renown, and then immediately goes into nothing but sin everywhere, and so God sent a flood and wiped them all out. Wiped out all the children of the Nephilim, those that bred with humans, but weren't quite humans. So there's something there that feels really like, okay, we got serious gaps in that story. And then we look at the Book of Enoch, and it talks about the 200 that came down on Mount Hermon and basically taught humankind, Homo sapiens sapiens, their ways, their technologies, things like sciences, astrology, cultivation of food, how to grow this, how to grow that. All of a sudden we have, agriculture popping up and cultivating like corn and wheat and things like this. And out of nowhere it comes. And, they're, of course, demonized in the Judeo-Christian tradition. I always wonder if it's the same entities that we view as Quetzalcoatl, and the other beings that we see all around the world. Just curious, and the timing.
Well, they are definitely tied together. It is curious how all of the stories have been given to us from a very small age, so we have to be, we have to pick it apart ourselves because we don't really know what's true.
Yeah, very interesting too, because like in the Book of Enoch, then they're locked up till the end of the age, and then they're released for a short time. But when we look at our history is one of brutality, warfare, competitiveness, dividedness. So if they are the source of all evil and they've been locked up until now, well, what about World War One, World War Two? What about all the wars we've seen throughout history, the atrocities of so many different empires, and conquering other people, eliminating other people? Because evil's been on the planet the entire time. The evil has not been locked away. So there's something that doesn't add up there.
Right, you got to wonder what exactly was locked away.
And getting back to the magnetic pole reversals, how about the Younger Dryas too? Younger Dryas is an interesting time frame because it was a major and abrupt change in the world's climate. That the event took place about 13,000 years ago and lasted for about 1,300 years. Now, this event is thought to be perhaps, the flood, the big flood, also the event that's talked about in the Sumerian tablets, the event that, Enlil used to get rid of those noisy, pain-in-the-ass humans.
Right, exactly. So you got to wonder even more.
Exactly, because what's interesting about this is this times with the Gothenburg magnetic excursion, which they say happened between 13,750 years ago to 12,350. So here's another magnetic excursion and huge, massive die-off.
Yeah.
Huge, massive die-off with entire species again disappearing off the planet.
Yeah, I do believe these things can be controlled by people in the know.
Yeah, like you said, it makes a lot of sense to me that, say if there are very, very intelligent beings that are guiding all this and knowing what's going to come, having a pretty good understanding of, the magnetic reversals, not just the magnetic reversals, but, also understanding the grand solar minimum, understanding all these things that are happening, including that which is triggering the ascension process right now, and using it as a perfect time for a reset. And let's try something new.
And I feel that's exactly what's been happening and going on right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the timing, and we could keep going back through history and looking at these different events and seeing how they coordinate.
Yeah, that would be, that's a really, really good thing to do. But we don't always have this much information to go by, but we do at the moment.
So going back and talking about that last champ event, that in my mind, I feel like it's the time frame that we said bye-bye to the Neanderthals. The poles did switch completely, and it took about 250 years to do so. So, now, if you look at the work that Ben Davison has done over at Suspicious Observers, he shows that our poles started the process about 1850, so about 170 years ago this time. And, it doesn't mean that it's going to follow suit, because the one thing that we're finding out is that it's not smooth, it's not typical. Every time is unique. So in that event, the poles completely switched. It took about 250 years to do so, and remain in the switch position for 440 years. During that process, the Earth's magnetic field was substantially weaker. Only 5% of today's field strength. 5%. Can you imagine that? I mean, do you know how much energy is coming in for 440 years, causing mutations?
That's pretty amazing and impressive.
Yeah, and again, it does feel like there are beings that salvage, save, and boy, we have that in the Christian, right, tradition. You got to get saved.
Yep.
You better be saved, for when Jesus comes and takes the select. Interesting when we really look at things.
It's all about control, taking control.
Yeah, and making choices and deciding which way they're going to go next. Because like you said, Neanderthals are pretty strong, pretty sturdy.
Right.
And of course, they're always depicted as these brutes, like,
Yeah.
But were they? Or were they actually maybe even more advanced in some ways?
Yeah, I'm getting that they were more advanced in some ways, and that's why they had to come to an end, because they were not as controllable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really rings true. I've kind of come to the same conclusions. And, we also know that Homo sapiens interbred with Denisovans, who were very, very similar to the Neanderthals as well, and also disappeared. And Cro-Magnon, bigger-brained, stronger, sturdier, and again, in and of itself disappeared, although assimilated, and we still have genes from all these in us. Well, some of us do.
Some of us do. Like if you get your DNA done, I think you can get a t-shirt that says I'm like 4% Neanderthal, which is cute.
It is cute. This is complex. And so they also say that once, about 15.5 million years ago, there was a reversal. And we getting this info from a mountain range in southeastern Oregon, and they're looking at the different lava flows. And I'm going to try to upload a video that we did from a lava field that was really like, oh man, you could just feel the energy and the disaster, that's unfolding. We actually went down inside the crater where, the eruption occurred, and we were going to go to the very bottom of the floor, and I started getting pictures, information coming through, and seeing this event and seeing the animals dying and the humanoid type beings that were there dying as well. And, I think that I'm going to have to look it up again. They date that event way farther back than I feel like it really happened. I feel like it happened more like around the Younger Dryas is my gut.
Yeah, I think they do the dating, deliberately falsifying data often, very often.
So this reversal that happened 15.5 million years ago, they tell us, is amazing because how fast it happened. It moved between 3 and 8 degrees a day. 3 and 8 degrees a day. That gives you, at the 8 degrees a day, it's only like 22 days to go 180 degrees. That's not even a month that whole thing happened.
I know, and what would happen to a human body?
Again, all of a sudden getting blasted with, if we only had 5% of our shields up, and we're guessing how far they're down now. Yeah. They have not given us any new data for forever, it seems. But from what we've gotten is that, it's at least 15% down, and maybe it's as far down as 25%. But we don't really know. Do you get anything from the guides?
The guides are telling me it's around 18% right now.
Right now. So, we might have, who knows, we might have another 100 years, 150 years before the full flip happens, or things can accelerate too. And if there are beings that are able to influence things, then, perhaps it'll be according to their will,
Unfortunately, yeah.
So, this is out of RT. Are the poles reversing? Earth's magnetic field 10 times more volatile than expected. Even though we live on this beautiful blue globe, in many places just covered with such abundant life, it has gone through periods of complete devastation.
Well, yeah, I mean, where the ground has been completely moved, it's almost like the Earth shifted, but the core stayed, or vice versa.
So a study by researchers in the UK and US shows that Earth's magnetic field, which protects it from the sun's destructive solar flares, and we know the sun's waking up, may change direction 10 times faster than previously thought. As we've, talked about, 8 degrees a day, that gives you a 180 degree shift in 22 point something days. Yeah, that's fast. The study shines light on the liquid iron flowing about 2,000 miles below the Earth's surface and how it influences the movement of Earth's geomagnetic field. The Earth's molten metal outer core creates electric currents that charge the planet's magnetic field. And the magnetic field is crucial to life on Earth, as not only does it help us with things like navigation systems, but it protects us from radiation. And a study published in Nature Communications details how researchers discovered that our understanding of the magnetic field is flawed and shows that changes in the direction of the magnetic field can be up to 10 times faster than the fastest ever recorded, which is pretty damn fast when you think about it. So the work involved combining computer simulations of the field generation process with a recently published reconstruction of time variations in the Earth's magnetic field spanning the last 100,000 years. And the work revealed a sharp change in direction of the magnetic field about 39,000 years ago. This is that one excursion we were talking about there. This shift at about 2.5 degrees per year was much faster than previous estimates. The shift was preceded by the global last champ excursion, a short reversal of the Earth's magnetic field roughly 41,000 years ago. That's where we said bye-bye to the Neanderthals. And there have been many times in history when the Earth's magnetic poles have reversed, and we know this because the magnetic makeup of certain ancient rocks which show metals with different polarizations. In general, we don't know much about the effects of such a flip, except that once it's completed, the needle on the compass will tell us that north is south and south is north. And this is important as such rapid changes are associated with local weakening of magnetic field, meaning that the Earth is more vulnerable to radioactive elements from space during these times and locations. Most generally, however, over the past century, the Earth's magnetic field has seen a 10% reduction in strength, with particular weakness being spotted over the Atlantic Ocean between Africa and South America. And that's known as the South Atlantic Anomaly. And this is also very interesting because the South Atlantic Anomaly, the thought is that it's actually splitting in two, and splitting into two separate anomalies right here. So this appears to be the weakest point right now. And so, yeah, my question is, are we going to see some new species develop down in this area, perhaps in South America? And what will happen to the people that are down there as well? Will they be the first ones to experience change?
Well, we did just do a story about whales that were showing changes in their genetics. So, I mean,
Yeah, there was what they take to be a whole new species of whale that they discovered off the coast of Mexico. So when we look at this, I mean, this is the coast of Mexico over in here, and this is where they found them. Were they over here and ventured up? I mean, is the radiation causing mutations already?
Right. It very well could be.
It most definitely could be, and it's fascinating too when you go into theosophy and read about different root races. The next root race is going to be basically people that are going to be kind of brown, is what it is. And it's thought that they're going to be more of that mezquito mix that we find in that area as well. Eventually, as the races keep merging, we will all kind of get to be more. We should, if there's not any sort of interference going on. We should get to be more homogenous.
Yeah, I would think so too.
And so I'll have all these links for you guys. It's fascinating to think of. It is speeding up. Change is speeding up. And when we look at these timelines, everything really kind of goes together. It's interesting too, like the last eruption of Yellowstone was not too far off of the time frame of the last full reversal that stayed. And the appearance of our genus as well. Now, so what we see, and many people have picked up on this, and a lot of you guys have said, check out Diehold's last videos, because he talks about 12,000 year cycles roughly where the sun novas, and the side of the earth where that gets that impact, which he is saying is going to be to the east basically of Africa, and that's going to be the side that he believes is going to get the impact from the sun. So you're better off in the Americas. That side's toast. There's nothing that's going to survive it. Very few people will survive the whole thing, is what his line of thinking is. I don't know if I feel that it's that intense in as far as what my intuition says. What do you think?
My intuition is telling me it's not going to be quite that intense. There is going to be ways that we can move out of the way and survive these times. But the most important thing that we need to do is be able to mesh with the Mother Earth.
And this is looking at the yugas, the cycles, and you have 24,000 year life cycles of Earth, 12,000 years ascending, 12,000 descending. And this is by Sri Yugaswar, which, there's people that totally disagree with his particular take on it. Although to me it feels right. It feels pretty close, pretty accurate. And Sri Yugaswar is the guru of Yogananda, who did so much to bring yoga to the West. And so we're starting an ascending cycle, and our consciousness is ascending again as we've left this dark age. But it's really curious that these 12,000 year cycles do really truly coincide with cataclysms, and we could also kind of match these up to magnetic excursions as well. So it's really curious. Is the reason why we have these magnetic excursions because of where we are? Because there are also minor ones around that 6,000 year time frame too. So if we're looking at this, we're looking at the equinoxes, and the solstices. And so when we're at these certain places in our galaxy and the universe, Are there certain forces that are being exerted on us? As we've talked about, astrology, Vedic astrology, everything has an effect on everything else. It's just the way it is. So are there certain forces that cause maybe a little bit more minor cataclysms over here and more major ones over there? And, when we look at it, again, that time frame is going to roughly coincide with the precession of the equinoxes, which is where we are as we travel. We're traveling around the sun. The sun is doing its own thing, going around the central sun and going around our galaxy in its precession. And that comes out to about 25,920 years, which is roughly in that same time frame. And we have Polaris as the pole star, but that's now. Sometimes it's Vega. So again, there's the wobble of the Earth to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of times that's not necessarily taken into consideration, but when you're dealing with math, that's very important.
Yeah. And again, this is why we prefer Vedic astrology to Western.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when we look at, well, for instance, we talk about, let me jump over here. We talk about the Earth, right? We started out looking, you see this, which is basically, we could view it as a torus, because again, the Earth is a live sentient being. And this is its energy field, which is basically a torus. We could also kind of see it as a sine wave at the same time. Well, as above, so below. It's the same thing with the human energy field. It's a torus. And we're affected just like the planet's affected by these different areas.
Oh yeah, and look at like a lot of our fruits and vegetables. You cut open an apple, you have that sign.
So there's a sine wave that we're going through. We could view it also as a sine wave. And, science is discovering now, ever since quantum physics started to be discovered, thanks to all those greats, including Max Planck, that there's so much more than that meets the eye. And again, we live in a holographic universe that is fractal in nature. This is the nature of our reality. It's fractal, again, as above, so below. And so when you're looking for like the return of Christ, now in my mind, it's Christ consciousness is what we're looking at. We're not looking for the physical return of the body that was known of as Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua.
Right, it's more of a vibration.
Yeah, and so now, as David Devine was saying, truly the age of Aquarius starts December 21st, 2020. That is when the age of Aquarius truly starts. So we're really, truly stepping foot into that new era. And it's going to be all about the heart chakra. And we're going from, again, I've equated it to Rama, incarnation of the preserver of the universe, Vishnu, the preserving force. And that was all about solar plexus. And Rama was probably about 5,000 years ago, closer to like that, one of those solstice points that we're talking about with the cataclysms. And then, Krishna came after that, and Krishna left, and that was the beginning of the Dark Age, is when Krishna left. And there's obvious correlations between Christ consciousness and Krishna consciousness, to me anyway, and to many others that have studied both traditions in depth. So I feel it's the kindling of the Christ energies within, which means, we're going to a heart-centered place. And this is what the next stage is going to be. It's the beginnings of unity consciousness and a heart-centered reality.
Yeah, and I think for all the chaos that's happening, people are going to be surprisingly good to each other because of that heart chakra involvement.
And when we look at the sine wave, again, it's all about the DNA. Because DNA is changing, and we've seen 3 and 4 strands now. It's been documented. Our DNA is changing, and it's all that quote-unquote junk DNA is not junk DNA, and we are coming online. Our consciousness is changing, and so, that's the second coming, which comes in each one of us individually, one person at a time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful time to be alive.
And it's triggered again by these changes in the magnetosphere and where we are as far as where we are located in the particular point in the galaxy at any one time because we're exposed to other influences.
I know. I just wish this information was more. I wish we had more information on it, period.
Yeah, so these are challenging times, but these are exciting times because truly, and you could say the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's right ahead of us.
It is.
So guys, thank you so much for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Make sure you are subscribed, click the bell, get all the notifications on both channels. As always, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.